In medieval Europe, nothing shaped a city more quietly or more dangerously than its water. Not the rushing rivers that carved valleys, nor the great channels that fed mills. Those were treacherous things, swollen with runoff from tanneries and slaughter yards. The water that kept a city alive came from quieter places, springs hidden in hillsides, wells dug into earth older than the towns above them. Below the cobbles, water moved, slow, clear, indifferent to the kingdoms it served. People gathered it in buckets, lifted it from wells lined with rope-worn oak. A good well was worth more than a field of grain. A poisoned one could empty a village. Kings understood this. Long before most subjects ever saw their ruler's face, they saw his fountains, carved stone basins fed by buried pipes, rising like promises in market squares. To a traveler arriving from the countryside, they were a sign that the realm was ordered, defended, and cared for. But the truth was more fragile. For all their faith in wells and fountains, most people did not truly know what made water safe or deadly. A cup drawn at sunrise might restore a man or bring fever by nightfall. Cold, clear water could kill as quietly as any blade, and few understood why. So communities prayed over their wells, guarded them, argued over them. A spring could anchor a village for centuries, or send it fleeing when sickness spread. Across medieval Europe, water was life. It was also risk, and for generations people trusted it without understanding the dangers that moved unseen beneath its surface. This is the story of why kings built fountains, and why even clean water could betray the people who drank it. Medieval people trusted their senses to judge water. If it was clear, flowing, and free of odor, it was considered good. If it looked murky or smelled wrong, it was avoided. Simple, practical, and often fatally incomplete. In the 7th century, the physician Paulus Hygienita wrote that the best water is devoid of taste and smell, pleasant to drink and clear to the sight. He believed boiling could improve impure water, but not transform truly foul sources. Other scholars recommended straining marshy water through cloth or mixing it with wine to dull its risks. It was a logic rooted in what the eye could see, but the invisible world had its own rules. A clear cup from a well near a grazing field might hide contamination from animal waste. A cold spring could collect runoff from burial grounds after long rains. A cup dipped from a bucket shared by dozens could spread illness, even if the water itself was clean. Yet these dangers were not understood. The medieval framework of health revolved around humors, air, temperature, and balance, not microbes. Sickness came from imbalance, not contamination. So a cup of cold water might comfort the sick or worsen their symptoms depending on the physician's interpretation. Some healers warned against cold water for those with stomach ailments. Others urged patients to drink only small amounts at specific hours to maintain humoral balance. Behind these beliefs lay a truth few grasped. Clean was not the same as safe. And yet, even imperfect understanding did not stop people from needing water, from wells, from springs, from any source the land offered. To truly understand medieval water, you must picture the structure of a town. Most settlements began not around markets or fortifications, but around a reliable source of fresh water. A village might form beside a hillside spring that never froze, even in winter. Farmsteads clustered near streams that ran clear through fields. Monasteries were often built where engineers could divert a flowing source into stone basins, for cooking, brewing, and daily rituals. Wells were lifelines. They demanded careful maintenance, clearing debris, repairing rope guides, reinforcing walls of oak or stone. A community that neglected its well risked more than inconvenience. It risked sickness. In larger towns, the need for accessible water grew beyond what wells alone could manage. That was when rulers intervened. Beginning in the 12th and 13th centuries, cities like London and Paris constructed conduits, underground channels that carried water from distant springs into the heart of the city. The Great Conduit of London, approved in 1236, ran for miles beneath the streets. It delivered water to a central structure where citizens filled buckets, cisterns, and barrels. These fountains were symbols of order. They told travelers, someone governs this place, someone controls the flow. But even these engineered marvels had limits. A disrupted conduit could plunge a city into chaos. A polluted spring could send illness through neighborhoods faster than officials could respond. Clean water was a blessing, but it was a blessing delivered by infrastructure held together with clay, wood, and hope. The danger of medieval water was rarely where people expected it. Rivers, with their color and smell, announced their risk openly. Wells and springs, by contrast, betrayed no warning. A well dug near a cemetery might collect seepage after storms, clear in appearance, lethal in consequence. Water drawn from highland springs could become contaminated by grazing animals above the collection point. A bucket lowered into a shared well might pick up disease from the rope rather than the water itself. To medieval villagers, these deaths remained mysterious. Sickness struck homes suddenly, unevenly, without pattern. Some families escaped untouched, while others fell ill within hours. Without knowledge of bacteria, people sought explanations elsewhere: the balance of humors, the influence of bad air, or divine displeasure. But in many cases, the culprit was simple: water that looked clean, tasted clean, and carried danger none could see. A record from the 14th century describes entire households falling ill after drinking from a well as bright as crystal. Another warns of mountain springs that caused fevers of the stomach despite their clarity. Even the revered fountains of cities could become compromised. If a spring feeding a conduit was fouled upstream, the contamination traveled directly into the city's heart. And because the water appeared perfect, people drank it without hesitation. The deadliness of clean water lay not in its appearance, but in its invisibility, a threat medieval Europe was simply not equipped to read. Water was not only a necessity, it was power. Across medieval Europe, rulers understood that controlling water meant controlling the stability of their towns. A well-maintained fountain could calm citizens during shortages. A failed one could spark unrest. Kings funded aqueducts, rebuilt aging conduits, and issued regulations to protect springs from contamination. In England, brewers were restricted from diverting too much water from public systems. In France, officials ordered tanneries and slaughterhouses to relocate downstream to protect drinking sources. These laws were not abstractions. They were attempts to defend the fragile boundary between health and sickness. A king who secured water was remembered as just. A king who failed could watch his subjects flee. Even monasteries held political weight through their springs. Pilgrims sought places where miraculous wells were said to heal the sick. These sites drew travelers, donations, and royal attention. But political power did not guarantee knowledge. Even rulers lacked understanding of why certain waters caused illness. Their efforts were practical, not scientific. They protected springs because clarity meant purity. They diverted rivers because smell meant danger. They enforced distance between industries and water sources because corruption was visible. Yet the invisible remained beyond their grasp. The fountains they built were triumphs of engineering, but they could not change the fundamental fact: water could kill without looking dangerous. Water held another role in medieval life, one not practical, but spiritual. In monastic communities, drinking only water was seen as a form of discipline. Many monks gave up ale and wine as acts of penitence. Some embraced austerity so deeply that they drank water drawn from harsh, mineral-heavy springs, simply to test their endurance. The story of Saint Anthony spoke of water so bitter that other monks could not tolerate it. He drank it daily as a testament of devotion. For the poor, choosing water was not ascetic, it was necessity. Ale cost money, water did not. A 10th century educational dialogue captures this tension perfectly. What do you drink? Ale if I have any, otherwise water. Water was both the drink of the humble and the discipline of the devout. But even in monasteries dedicated to routine and purity, danger slipped through. Shared buckets, communal wells, and stagnant basins could carry illness silently through cloisters that believed themselves protected. The same drink used for penance sometimes delivered sickness, a cruel irony that medieval people attributed not to contamination, but to divine testing or the body's imbalance. Water was purity. Water was punishment. Water was survival. And none of those meanings protected the faithful from the risks they could not see. The deeper you look into medieval water systems, the clearer the fragility becomes. Conduits relied on long stretches of lead or clay pipe, materials easily cracked by frost or shifted by root and soil. A single fracture could allow polluted runoff to seep inside. Wells depended on hand-dug linings of stone, which could crumble after decades. A collapsed wall exposed groundwater to surface waste. Even the simple rope that lowered buckets could fray, dropping debris into the depths. Without modern tools, maintenance was constant and imperfect. London's Great Conduit required near-continuous repair. Engineers cleared silt, sealed cracks with clay, and replaced broken pipe segments by hand. Reports describe workers crawling through narrow tunnels just wide enough to breathe. And despite all this effort, contamination still occurred. A cracked pipe upstream could carry illness into the center of one of Europe's largest cities. A misaligned stone ring in a village well could expose water to soil bacteria that no one understood. These failures were often invisible until people fell sick. A fountain that looked unchanged might be delivering water very different from the day before. A well that had served generations might suddenly turn deadly after a storm or flood. The medieval world depended on systems it believed were stable, but beneath the surface, those systems were fragile, porous, and constantly on the edge of failure. And the people who trusted them had no way to know. When we picture medieval Europe, we imagine battles, markets, cathedrals, the grand things that leave stone behind. But the quiet truth is this: most lives were shaped not by war or kings, but by water drawn one bucket at a time. People trusted wells because they had nothing else to trust. They prayed over springs, guarded fountains, argued over access, all without understanding why one cup could heal and another could kill. They did what they could. They built conduits, carved basins, enforced rules. They purified by sight, by taste, by smell. It was not enough. Not because they failed, but because the dangers they faced were smaller than sight could see and deeper than any well they could dig. Across medieval Europe, the greatest threat was not famine, nor war, nor winter. It was the simple act of drinking what looks safe. Today, water flows from taps, filtered, measured, monitored. But in the Middle Ages, a clear cup held both the promise of life and the possibility of death. The fountains kings built were triumphs of their age, but even they could not change the truth that lingered beneath every bucket drawn. Clean water was never truly safe, and the people who depended on it lived every day on the edge of a danger they could not see.